alaikum and good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Hassan Abomeri. I'm an anesthesiologist and pain physician. I'm also the chair of IMANA's student resident committee. And part of our program here today is called Ask the PD, residency applications and acing your interviews. So this is going to be co-hosted with a resident delegate, Dr. Anmar Dalati, who is currently a resident at Marion Joy PM&R program. And also we're very lucky to have Dr. Pavone here as well. Just a moment here. A little bit of information about our speakers. Dr. Dalati is a first-generation Syrian American born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. He completed his undergraduate studies at Michigan State University, where he earned a degree in biological sciences. He obtained his medical degree from the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine, and he currently resides in Warrenville, Illinois, and is a fourth-year physical medicine rehabilitation resident at Northwestern Marion Joy Rehabilitation Hospital with plans to pursue a fellowship in interventional pain management. We also have Dr. Larissa Pavone. We're very lucky to actually be able to offer some time here with a program director. So we're very thankful that Dr. Pavone was gracious enough with her time and expertise. She is currently the program director of the PM&R program at Northwestern Marion Joy Rehabilitation Hospital. She's been practicing pediatric rehabilitation for over 10 years. She grew up in upstate New York and attended SUNY Upstate Medical University. She completed her physical medicine and rehabilitation and pediatric rehabilitation training at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, formerly known as the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, here in downtown Chicago, Illinois. Awesome. So thank you guys again very much for being here and giving us your time to help applicants understand a little bit more about how to apply and how to match into residency. And do the next slide. So we have no relevant disclosures for today's talk. Our objectives today are going to be to review important dates and deadlines in terms of applying for residency. We're going to review the ERAS residency application checklist and go into those in some detail. We're also going to discuss some interview strategies, and then we'll have our session for Q&A. A little bit about IMANA. So IMANA is the Islamic Medical Association of North America. We're a 501c3 charity organization established in 1967. Mission is to provide medical relief through quality healthcare to people from all walks of life. We like to profess that entrusted by health providers who are guided by faith, we aim to provide access to safe environments for, again, people from all walks of life, for equitable healthcare for all, both domestically through domestic programs and internationally through our global mission effort, and for general wellness as well. This, again, particular program is part of our mentorship and development program to help people along the way through their medical careers. And here I'm going to let Dr. Dalati take over.
So some important dates for the applicants to be aware of: June 7th this year, the 2024 MyERAS application cycle open. Applicants should have received a token from their programs allowing them to register for MyERAS and then start filling out their applications. On September 6th this year at 9 a.m., the applicants will be able to begin submitting applications to their chosen programs. On September 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern, the NRMP opens. This is an entirely separate entity that applicants will have to register for in order to participate in the match. And come January or February, we'll probably do another webinar to kind of discuss how the match works, how the algorithm works, the history of the match, and talk about how to formulate a rank order list. September 27th at 9 a.m. Eastern, residency programs can start reviewing ERAS applications. And then January 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, the standard registration for the NRMP closes. Applicants can still register, but there is a late fee for joining after that time. I want to kind of backtrack here for a second, just pose a question to Dr. Pavone, if you will, just kind of discuss maybe the importance of applicants submitting their applications on opening day versus waiting a week or two, or kind of closer to that time period when program directors can start looking at applications.
Sure. So there is a little bit of delay from when your applications are submitted to when we can view them. Typically, I don't know, it's not an exact date every year, but usually it's beginning October. Lately, things got a little different during the COVID time, but like end of September, beginning of October. I agree with Dr. Dalati to get your applications in soon and have them complete to the best of your ability. I know some things are outside of your control, such as someone's like not uploading their letter or for you or something like that. But a lot of programs will review the applications right away and make their selections. I, as a program director, like if someone submits late, we'll go back, like we keep track of that. So I will go back and look at that applicant to see, if that applicant is a good fit for our program. But I can't say or know if every program will go back if you're submitting a little bit later. So doing it timely is definitely a good thing.
Great. Thank you for providing a little insight there. We're going to jump into the next part of the segment here, and that's the ERAS residency application checklist. So we'll kind of discuss some of the different components of the application, starting with experiences. So this is really an opportunity for you to describe any volunteering you're involved in, any work or research related opportunities that you've kind of completed during your pre-medical or medical time as a student. And I know there's kind of like a character limitation on doing these descriptions, so you really want to be concise when you describe these experiences. And I think the best way to kind of look at it is, or the way to approach it is to ask yourself three major questions. What is the experience? What did you do? And what did you learn? That's probably the best way to approach kind of describing it for program directors to look at. And Dr. Pavone, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what you're looking for in particular when applicants submit this portion of their application.
Yeah, absolutely. So every program, I would say, is probably looking for something different. There may be some similarities between programs, but different things are important to different programs. One thing that I'll see is people have a lot of experiences, but make sure that you're listing things that you are actively involved with. And I'm not saying you guys do this, but don't just kind of fill the application with fluff, because that can backfire on you during interviews. If someone, you may think it's an experience that other people may not know that much about, but you never know who's done what, and they may go into detail with that experience. So you want to make sure that you're able to talk about all those different experiences and your contribution within those experiences. So when you're doing that, make sure that, you've been actively involved in those. And then another thing that I say, as I look at these applications more and more, as people, apply to the different programs, is, I really like deep work too. So if you only have a couple of experiences, that's okay. I mean, if someone just did one thing, one volunteer thing, and they were actively involved in that, that's great. Experiences, though, they have, and Dr. Dalati might go into this a little bit more, but, the experiences could be volunteerism, it could be research related. So, I like to see a diversity of the experiences, but with each thing, like if you were just involved in one research project, that's okay. If you were just involved in one volunteer thing, that's okay, as long as you were dedicated to that experience.
All right, the second part here is the personal statement. So this is really an opportunity for applicants to really tell their story, talk about, why they're applying to their particular program, talk about a little bit, why they got into medicine, tell their story essentially. So is there anything in particular that, stands out to you that makes a good personal statement, and what makes a bad personal statement?
So I love the personal statements. I read every one of them, believe it or not. And, you know, I always like a good intro. I like something that grabs me right away. So when I was like looking through, just thinking about what different programs want, those first few sentences are sometimes the most important, because I don't know how different people read those personal statements, but the first few sentences are very important. And it's always really fun, I would say, when I'm reading through the applications and someone tells a really good story, whatever that may be. It could be different. Personal statements are exactly what they mean. Something, why was this field? So the things that I'm looking for is like, what drew you to the field? Are you passionate about it? Do you know about it? What kind of experiences have you had in it? So that those would be, and just to get to know you. Like, I really love when I read a personal statement and I have a feel for who a person is when I'm done reading that statement. So I think the most important things to summarize, I guess, would be to, talk about why you want to be in that field, whatever, specialty you're choosing, why you're passionate about it. And then, let them know about you. This is definitely a place to talk about what makes you unique or what makes you a great candidate for that program.
Next up is our letters of recommendation. So just to be clear about this, you want to make sure that you choose your letter writers wisely. Remember, they're making, they're speaking on your behalf. They're talking about your character, what you bring to the program. Were you early, were you late? All kinds of things that kind of program directors might look at. And Dr. Pavone, how much of an emphasis do you really put on these letters of recommendation when you read them?
So this is a really important element, I would say, of the application. So make sure, as Dr. Dalati said, make sure that your letter writer knows you. The best letters come from people that know the candidate well. Make sure you have at least one letter for the specialty that you're applying to. But if you only can get one, because people have different experiences, or different abilities to do certain electives. So if you only have one, that's okay. One from your specialty, I definitely look for that. But it's okay to have a variety of people write those letters. So if you're doing PM&R, have a physiatrist write your letter, but then it's great if you have a surgery person write it, or an internal medicine. So don't feel like you need to have letters from all the same specialty. And I actually really like to see the variety. And listen, when you ask your letter writer to write a letter, listen to how they respond to you. I have had an experience where someone asked me to write the letter, and I was very happy to write the letter, but I didn't really know them. And I was honest with them. I said, look, I'm more than happy to write the letter for you, but I might not be able to write a strong letter for you because I don't know you that well. I've been in clinic with you for one day. These are kind of the things that I would say, but maybe there might be someone who knows you a little bit better that you would want to ask. And ultimately that person did not ask me to do the letter. So, really listen when someone responds to you too, because you definitely want strong letters.
And I think you highlighted a really important kind of fact, and that's looking at what programs want. Some programs, like I said, they're looking for at least one letter from that particular specialty, or they're looking for, they want the internal medicine or whatever it may be. So make sure that you have your ducks in a row when you're kind of asking for the letters. That way you can apply with a complete application when the time comes.
And also make sure you have letter writers that will follow through. I mean, most will, but it's okay to follow up with them. Like if you have, I usually ask people, make sure you ask people well in advance, because everyone's very busy. And so maybe giving them a date when you'd like it by, because the first thing usually I ask if someone asks me for a letter is, what date would you like it by? Or what date are you hoping to have the letter uploaded? So then they know your expectations for your application. So that's not something that holds your application up.
Right. All right, transcripts, MSP, and Dean's letter. So transcripts, it is what it is. This is your coursework, your grades, your USMLE or COMLEX scores, the MSPE, the medical school performance evaluation. Your Dean's letter basically says that you're in good standing and that you're ready for residency, essentially. Anything you want to kind of add to that? I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but.
Yeah, I agree. Very self-explanatory, but if you have something that's not as strong on your transcript, just be ready to kind of talk about it. Because if someone has a pretty strong application, but there's something that looks off character or not, isn't in line with that applicant, I will definitely ask them about it during the interview.
Yeah, you kind of jumped ahead to our red flag section. We'll get there here in a second, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about how to kind of approach those issues when they come up. And then last but not least, your photo. I mean, make sure you're uploading, a clear photo, get a professional photo. Guys, shave, do what you got to do, look professional. This is really one of your first impressions with the program that you're going to interview with. They want to put a face to the application. So it's really important that you get a good picture. All right, moving on, red flags. Not everyone's favorite, but certainly something important for us to cover. USMLE and complex failure or any, coursework failure, Dr. Pavone, I'll kind of leave this one up to you because you're the one reviewing applications, not me.
Life happens, okay? I know there are people who may study very hard and be a good applicant and have a really bad day. So don't feel completely like everything's over if you don't pass one of these examinations. It can make it more challenging, absolutely. Some programs may not look at you as a candidate, but make sure you're going to go and take it again. I look at both scores. So if someone failed it and then I look at their follow-up score and they did a really great job, well, then usually I'm like, they might have had a really bad day. If it's out of line with the student that you are, people are viewing the application holistically. I always look at this because sometimes I think I could get a really good candidate that other programs might have looked over because of this. But, if you're studying for these, it's going to make it harder if you, have a failure. But again, if you have a failure, be ready to talk about what happened, and be honest about what happened. I think that's the best thing that you can do.
And I'm going to group the next two together, time since graduation and any interruptions in medical school education. So time since graduation, they kind of define that as, time from when you graduated up until when you're, applying to residency. And then any interruptions in medical school education, whether it was financial hardship, any family obligations, or any passing of a loved one versus, something like transferring schools. Again, I think you kind of covered this point. Be ready to talk about those things, what you did in that time, what you learned from it, and, just be honest about the situation.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. That's exactly what you do.
I'm ready to be a program director.
Yeah.
All right, last one here, late applications and applying with an incomplete application. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, well, if it's a late application, it might not get looked at. So I think that's, especially when you're dealing with a really competitive specialty, I can only speak to how I handle, the applications. I have a really great program manager who will pull those forward, and I'll still look at them. But I don't know if every program does this. So I would really, really encourage you to have it on time. And incomplete, I won't consider an incomplete application because it's a really important thing to do. And I'm not sure why someone's not complete with their application. Although, again, we have a really great program manager who sometimes will reach out to the candidate. Like if a letter is missing, then we may reach out. I won't, but my program manager would reach out and say, hey, you're missing this letter. And so look for that piece. But I don't know if everyone does that. So that's a big thing. Make sure your application is complete.
Interviews. So congratulations, you made it this far. You got your interview. Take a deep breath. Start preparing for your interviews, because if you got the interview, they're actually looking at you seriously, and everything at this point is within your control. So pay attention to the next few slides. I'm sure you'll get a few important points here that may help you on interview day. So just prepare and get ready for your interviews when they come up. So we're going to talk about some common interview questions, and we're going to start with, tell me about yourself. So I'll be honest with you, this question, the first time, when I was applying to residency, it kind of freaked me out. I was like, I don't really know what they're looking for, what they want from me. And I'll let you kind of speak on it, and then I'll kind of come back and kind of give my view on it, because as you know, I just finished my fellowship interviews a couple of days ago. So I'll let you take the floor here for a second, and then I'll jump in after.
Yeah, just exactly as it says, just pre-prepared, because you could be really it could be a really open-ended question. And if, someone's just kind of finishes in a sentence, you're like, okay, it can make the interview a little bit tougher if it's a really like you want to tell them about yourself in a succinct manner, but give some information. Sell yourself. Tell them what important things there are to know about you, and what might set you apart from other candidates.
Yeah. So I think when I was kind of approaching this question as a student, and even now when I was kind of approaching it as a resident applying to fellowship, I generally like to kind of have a few bullet points in my mind, kind of quick hitters that I can talk about, things that can kind of direct the conversation in the interview. Believe it or not, I feel like this question kind of gives you a little control over the interview, and interviewers already know what they need to know about you on your application. So what I think they're looking for is, what makes you tick, what makes you special. And for me, like I said, I have a few bullet points I like to talk about: family, friends. Dr. Pavone knows I'm a foodie. I love to eat in the city, and I love sports. So like those things I like to talk about, and how important they are to me. Those are things that they're not always necessarily covered in the application. So, showcase who you are. Why did you choose to become a doctor? So pretty basic question, talk about what kind of drove you towards medicine. Is there anything in particular that you kind of like, kind of lights a light bulb for you that kind of says, oh, this is a great answer in particular?
I wouldn't say there's one answer. I think with all this stuff, is be honest, unless, sometimes my parents maybe do it. I don't know how many times people, if that's the case, we'll then find something else to say. But I think if you're honest and passionate, you can tell when people are passionate about what they're going to do, no matter what their answer, that will come through. And I want to go back to your last question, because you had an excellent point, Dr. Dalati, about tell me about yourself. Talk about things that aren't necessarily on your application. I didn't emphasize that, but I think that's a good thing, because we've already read your application. So that's an excellent point, or something you want to re-highlight when you're speaking.
And why'd you choose this specialty? Again, kind of, any personal experiences you've had. I know for me, when I was applying to PM&R, I had a personal experience with my mentor in Pikeville, that kind of really drew me towards the field. And same thing kind of happened when I was applying to fellowship. I told my story kind of in my personal statement, and I kind of re-highlighted it when I got to my interviews. I think this one's a pretty straightforward question. Just tell it like it is. Be honest and be enthusiastic about why you chose a specialty. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? This one gets asked all the time. So any particular things you're looking for when you kind of discuss strengths? How do you approach a question like this?
Yeah, for strengths and weaknesses, I would, usually the strengths are never a problem. People usually think about good strengths. Weaknesses, you have to think this one through. And it could be depending on, what programs are looking for. But I've had some people give me some weaknesses, and they haven't really, I could give you an example of something that might be said that you wouldn't, not to do is, someone had told me, like, I'm really disorganized. I just never can get it together, not like what they were doing. Like, if you're giving a weakness, you can always, give a spin on like how you're working on that weakness. So I usually ask people, what are you working on? Because, I think, our weaknesses could also be something that we're trying to strengthen. I, look at my blind spots of where I'm not as strong and try to improve those. And so I think it's okay to admit, it's okay to say, I've really struggled with organization, but these are the things that I'm doing to get myself organized, so just giving that weakness, whatever that might be for you, but not kind of putting a spin of like how you're working on that. So just make sure, honesty is good when you're talking and interviewing, but also put a spin on it. And sometimes I get, the generic weakness answer, which is okay too. If someone's really practiced and their weaknesses, trying to think, I, take on too many things, or there are definitely and you know what, that's okay. That's all right. I would say it's more the honest weakness answer that someone puts a positive spin on it that really impresses me. But the standard weakness and issue answers, I'm okay with too.
Yeah, I think you highlighted something really important, which was to talk about how you're kind of working towards, improving those weaknesses. So it's a great question for you to kind of sit down and just reflect on where you're at and how you can improve, and talk about, again, what are you doing to get better in that particular area.
Examples would be great here. If you had an example of like maybe something, I think medical school, you could use some of the examples like, oh, I had difficulty with my history present illness. And during my internal medicine, this is something that I continuously worked on. And by the end, they said I did a great job, but it's something I continue to work on. I'm aware that it could be a point of weakness for me.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I think this question, I'd say not everyone's got an answer to it, and that's totally fine. I think I flop back and forth. Sometimes I say I just want to do private practice or I want to do academia, but if you're not sure, just say you're not sure. And if you're sure, then say that you're sure and that's what you want to do. I mean, just, say it like it is, but sometimes it's hard to kind of have an idea of what you want to do in 5 years. Just because you don't know how the training's going to go and what things are going to look like in 5 years. But if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think with this question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Really, what we're looking for is like what you've kind of thought through with your specialty. So, like, if you could just pick where you are right now, and I kind of say I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, but in 5 years, I want to be a practicing physiatrist. I'm not sure if I'll be in academics or I'll be in private practice. I'm entertaining all those different ideas, but just kind of talk about the goal that you have at that time, but it's okay if you don't have specifics, and those specifics may change. I tell everyone I won't hold you to it. I think I wanted to be a sports medicine physiatrist when I started, and I'm a pediatric physiatrist. So, things will change.
All right. And then the last dreaded question, what questions do you have for me? I think this is actually a really important question, kind of like the very first one, because it shows how prepared you are when you're in your interview. Did you do your research on the program? I think it's a great opportunity for you to go online and kind of do your research on the program, maybe talk to prior graduates, and just come up with a list of questions that you want to ask the program director or the interviewer that just shows that you have a deep interest in the program. So if there's anything you want to add to that, I would say don't come with 0 questions. I'd say have something.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that 100. So you are ready to be a program director. I agree with that. I always love when I can tell that someone, like, they know our program, and sometimes it could be as simple as reading the website and taking a couple bullet points. That's a very excellent point. Like, I really like when someone has studied the program, researched the program, and is asking a question about it. I think use this opportunity. One thing that I say during the interviews is, the programs are interviewing you, but you're also interviewing the programs because you're picking that program. And so I think that's really important to go in with that mindset. You're also trying to see if this is a good fit for you. We're both interviewing each other at that time, and maybe that will give you a little bit more confidence when you're going into the interview.
Yeah, and again, just you want to make sure it's the right fit. So if you're a research oriented person, you go to a program that clearly doesn't put a lot of emphasis on research, maybe it's not the program for you, and it's a good time to ask the program director or the interviewer what kind of resources are available to you. If it's not available to you and your heart is set on doing a ton of research, then a community program may not be the best fit for you. Something more research oriented or a university program may be a better fit for you. So really important, like Dr. Pavone said, to you're interviewing the program as much as they are interviewing you. All right, interview day tips. Review your application and know your CV. This one is huge. I think you kind of touched on it earlier on when you said don't fluff your CV too much, because especially if there's a lot of old stuff in your CV that you're kind of detached from, it's been several years since you've reviewed it. You don't want to be asked about those things and then come in and not have an answer for them or not be able to describe it in detail. So know your CV and know it cold. So if there's anything else.
Yeah, I would say this could fall into some of the like yellow to red flag area. If you're asked about something on your CV or your application and you don't recall it or can't really speak to it, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. know your program and your interviewers. Again, we'll kind of touch on this again. Do your research about the program. Reddit, believe it or not, is a great resource. People talk about programs all the time. There's a lot of Excel sheets out there. People kind of review programs, give a little information and background about programs. So you can access those online. And then doing a little research about your interviewers. I know I just had a interview last month with a psychologist at a pain program, and the psychologist had written a paper about the importance of multidisciplinary pain management and bringing the pain physician in and making sure all providers are on the same page. And I read the paper, I was really interested in it, and the psychologist and I had a really great discussion about it. So if it's something you're interested in and the program or the interviewer, it's something that they really like, it's a good way to have a conversation, something beyond just, the more superficial things, I think.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I think you covered that well.
Be presentable. Guys, get a haircut, shave your beard. You get to make a single impression at these interviews. So make sure you're ready to make that impression, because you only get the one. Be early and not on time. So I don't know, Dr. Pavone, are you doing virtual interviews this year, or?
Yeah, I was going to speak to the virtual, just kind of the environment. I do go into, I looked at the slides. I don't think you talk about that too much. Yeah, the virtual environment, just try and get a quiet place that you can do it in. And things happen. I mean, one day, someone's dog went nuts because the garbage man came by, and like, don't worry, you didn't totally ruin your interview, but try and find a quiet place. Make sure you have a good internet connection. Nothing's worse for the app. I would say more so for the interviewee if your internet is not working well during the interview. So those are two kind of just virtual. We're continuing virtual. I think it will be hard to go back after we see how financially this kind of helps a lot of people out. So yeah, I think most still plan on virtual. Yes, and I love that. I noticed this in the slides earlier. Be early, not on time. I like that.
That, for Dr. Pavone and Mary and Joy, they're doing the virtual, but some programs will do in person. Make sure you get your flight, the day before. This has several advantages, one of which is, you're not under any pressure or stress when you get into town. You have some time to kind of get the lay of the land, because you may end up spending your residency at this program in this location. So get a feel for the area. I know me personally, I interviewed in New York for residency, and it's just too big of a city for me. I couldn't do it. So getting there a day early and kind of exploring, it helped. When I was doing my rank order list, I said, this is just not a place I see myself living. And then with virtual, you want to be, logged in 20 minutes, 30 minutes beforehand. It gives you a time to kind of just calm down, calm the nerves a little bit, take 10, 15 minutes to review your application, and just, be ready. Maybe you'll have 10, 15 minutes to talk to one of the residents or, the program coordinator. You can ask them a few questions, get to know them a little bit better. So, be early, not on time. Think before you speak and be concise when you do. So I know we get asked a lot of questions and we immediately just want to start rambling, but gather your thoughts, take a minute and speak, as concisely as possible. You don't want to give a roundabout answer to a very simple question. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely concise. But give a good answer, but concise is good.
And then last but not least, be honest, be authentic, and be enthusiastic. Being honest, we talked about the red flags. Be ready to answer those tough questions. If you have any red flags, and even if you don't have any red flags, answer as honest as possible. Be authentic, be who you are, because again, it's a two-way interview. You want to give the impression of who you are, because people want to know who they're going to work with for the next 3 to however many years during residency, and show a little life, smile, be enthusiastic about it, because again, no one wants to kind of work with a drag. They want to, enjoy their work environment. Anything else you want to add to the interview day tips?
No, I think you covered it. I think all of those are great tips.
Post-interview. All right. Thank you letters and letters of intent, or thank you emails, whatever it may be. Dr. Pavone, you can speak on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I think, you know, kind of comes and goes with the thank yous. I say thank yous are nice. I mean, I don't know if every program feels that way, but I think a thank you is important. You know, just to let the program know, you know, if you enjoyed your interview day, or if you know it's something that you're interested in. I would definitely say do this. I think also to think about something that I always didn't think about, but now I work closely. You know, don't forget the other people you interact with who set up that interview. So those program coordinators and program managers, I think it's a really nice touch if you acknowledge, because those are the people who, you know, if you have to, you know, adjust your interview day, or, you know, something's going wrong, those are the people you interact with, and they really play an integral part in that day and making it a successful day. So, you know, not only thanking your interviewers that you have, but if there is someone in the office, an assistant of some sort, who really helped you, I think it's also very nice to thank that person as well. Very nice touch.
How do you approach letters of intent? I know kind of when I was applying, I think the main rule here is just send it to, if you're intending on ranking a program #1 overall, send it to one program, right? I mean,
yeah, we all talk. Not, you know, don't feel like, oh, they're all talking about me, you know, but there is the chance that, you know, two program directors can talk. You know, people don't talk. I mean, we don't talk about our applicants and our rank list or anything like that. But, you know, you never know who knows each other, I guess I would say in that regard. So just, you know, be authentic, be honest. You know, if it's not your #1, but you're really into them, just say you're one of my top choices. That's okay. You know, you don't have to, if, you know, but if they're not your #1, I would say, you know, you could tell you're #1, but beyond that, you know, you could just say you're a top program. You know, the rules for, I always kind of let applicants know this, the rules for program directors, who, you know, basically we can't, express any like interest or intent towards an applicant. So you might get silence on the other end after you do something like that. Don't let that affect your rank list. You know, just rank the programs that you're interested in. So I think you can't, do you do the rank list? I can't remember do you go into the rank list in a little bit? I can't remember if we talked
the
about
rank
that.
list is like another webinar we're going to do in January.
Okay. All right. So I'll hold that thought.
All right, I think that concludes kind of like all the major things we wanted to talk about today. We covered all of our objectives. So this is kind of our session with Dr. Pavone. I think there was at least one question in the chat directed towards you. I think Dr. Pavone, you saw it earlier.
Yeah, I did see the question earlier. The applicant asked, I think it was like, what do you do if there were multiple failures? But it wasn't clear if it was like failures on the exams versus failures of matching into a residency program. So I asked for clarification, but I didn't see that come through.
Okay. If we get a clarification on that, we'll.
Yeah, I could, you know, if it's relevant for people,
I think
could
it
kind of answer
reset.
it.
So I have a few others too that I could add to that, but I don't know if Dr. Pavone, if you wanted to comment on kind of what we saw from that previous question.
Yeah, so I'll take it both ways. You know, if you've had multiple failures on the exams, you know, obviously showing a passing score, studying really hard. You know, if you have failed, you know, make sure that you're trying to put a good, you know, if you fail the first time, I wouldn't look to just pass the second time. I would really try and hit it out of the park. With that, the person had also asked about taking USMLE step 3, and I don't know if that was pertaining to if they hadn't pass the other steps, but I would say, yeah, every test you can add in that can show that you can pass the examinations. I would definitely add that in.
All right. Dr. Pavone, do you feel that programs or your program screen by step score or degree?
I cannot speak to other programs and what they do. You know, I look at the applications holistically, so I'm not doing any screening. And it's pass fail for the first step. So but someone could screen by failures. But I really, at our program, look at the applications holistically.
What about MD versus DO, FMG versus AMG? Are those things typically screened?
No, not so much. It depends, like, because sometimes like certain, MDDO, the school, everyone's going to school and taking the same exams within the US. I think it gets a little more complicated when you're going outside the US because you might not be familiar with the medical school that that the person's applying from. But sometimes you are familiar with some of the schools that the foreign grad may be applying from. And then there's also like the visa issue. Certain programs can't support visas where other programs can support visas. So it should say it on the website. It kind of comes down to the size of the program, if they're connected to a university, whether they could support those.
If I can, I'm just going to jump in here. And
Yeah,
ask.
it looks like the clarification on the previous question was a failed attempt in step 1 and step 2.
Yeah, and that's, I look for, like I said, I think for me, if I see a failed attempt, I really look at what the score was the second time around, because I've seen someone fail it and then just do so great on it. And I look at that that might be a missed opportunity for some other programs if they're just taking a failure and eliminating that applicant without looking at the application holistically.
I'm going to
And last question here is, do you recommend audition rotations?
If you are interested in the program, I do. Absolutely. Both for the program and for the applicant. You can see if the program is a good fit for you, and the program can see if you're a good fit for them. I really encourage it for people who may be a really great clinician, but haven't, scored as well in medical school or on their transcript. So not just a test, but like looking at the transcript and things like that. I definitely encourage it. If you are that great clinician when you get in there and interactions with patients, that will go a long way.
So I think
Sorry, Dr. Dalati, were you going to say something?
That was kind of jumping into my question for you, which is, if someone says, oh, well, I haven't really received any interviews or I haven't received from my top choice, what do I do? What can I do to kind of make myself kind of stand out in the pile? Or is there anything that they can do really? And I think the audition is one thing, but if you want to touch on a few other points, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think the auditions, also don't be afraid to let a program know, you're really interested in them. Like if you didn't hear from them, there are so many great applicants. Like for PM&R now, there are just like, the pool is amazing. And so sometimes you have to eliminate people because you can't interview everybody. And sometimes I'm looking at 2 equal candidates and it's really, really challenging to choose which candidate. And if someone reaches out to me and they're very interested in my program, I will look at that application again. I can't speak to every other program. We as a program we don't offer more, we don't invite more candidates than we have interview spots. But I might, if someone was really into the program and, I might relook at that application and, in a little bit more detail and just see if, maybe we would want to offer them an interview and I might find another spot.
Sounds good. Any final thoughts from Dr. Dalati or Dr. Pavone?
Yeah, so I actually had another question for you, Dr. Pavone. This doesn't happen very often, but are there any kind of red flag questions that someone, like an interviewer, might ask an applicant? And if you could give an example or how someone should approach something like that, kind of give us your 2 cents on that.
So red flag questions for me as the program director that the applicant's asking me?
No, I mean, so if the interviewer is asking the applicant something that's kind of like out of bounds.
Oh, yeah. So they really shouldn't be asking about your personal life. Like the interviewer shouldn't be asking the interviewee about personal life questions. It depends. Like if you're having a very naturally flowing conversation and, you know, children get brought up and you're talking openly about your children, like if someone comes to me and they're talking about their children and they're a huge part of their life, I might say, oh, you know, relate in some way, like, oh, how old are your children? But they've offered me that information. I would never ask for that information outright. You know, if the questions seem personal, you know, that might be an uncomfortable situation, and it goes both ways, you know, for the when you ask the interviewee, like, do you have any other questions, you know, I have had the experience where people have asked personal questions, which is pretty uncomfortable.
Mm. Okay. So I know like sometimes I've seen kind of in some forums too, like sometimes people say, oh, you know, this person asked me like political views, for example.
Ooh.
How do you approach that as the interviewee, or you
Oh
know?
yeah. So if it was something, because you never know, it might not be completely representative of the program. You can't control all your interview. Hopefully you picked good interviewers, but you never know. So how would you handle that if they were asking that question? I think you could just say, you know, that's not really something I'm very comfortable sharing, you know, about that. And depending on how you know, I think you could just say, you know, I'm not really comfortable answering that question. You know, are there any other questions about my application, you know, or pertaining to me as a candidate you would like to ask me?
It's a good way to reroute that because
Yeah, I would reroute if you can, but that could be really, you know, I always say those are the things you think about 5 minutes after the interview, like, oh, I should have said this, you know, because those sometimes you get stunned and it's hard to answer those questions. And it's okay if you fumble a little bit, you know, you'll get back on your feet. And that, I guess, would be another good point is like, if you stumble a little bit in the interview, that's okay. You know, just move on to the next question. You can't let that one answer, one thing that, you know, maybe you felt like you didn't give the best answer, ruin an interview. It doesn't need to.
right. I'm done with all my questions. Dr. Pavone, do you have any kind of parting wisdoms or tips for our viewers before we kind of close out the session?
Dr. Dalati, I think you did a great job of kind of covering the really important things. I think using some of the words that you use, be honest, be authentic, be professional, you know, be early, not on time. I love that. So I think, you know, be true to yourself. Don't, you know, you know, the program will get to know you. And so just make sure that you're yourself. I'm looking for people for, I think for the different programs, like you're really looking for someone who fits into your program. And so, you know, keep that in mind. And I always want to say, like, if you don't get an interview at one of the programs you want to, reaching out to them again is okay. Worst case, they don't say anything back. You know, they hadn't given you an interview. So worst case, they don't respond to your email. That's all right. But you gave it another shot. And I would say, you know, as you're going through this process, like, if you don't get offered an interview from a couple of the programs you want to, don't be discouraged. There are so many great applicants that sometimes don't take these things personally. It's very challenging to set, you know, just as it's very challenging to be an applicant. It can be challenging to kind of go through these applications and be able to find the right people for your program. But you might be a great fit for another program that you don't even know about, you know, that you're a great fit for.
All right. Well,
Awesome. Nice words. Dr. Dalati, thank you so much for leading this discussion. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Pavone, we can't thank you enough for your time. This is going to be so helpful for our viewers. It's also going to be up on our website, the IMANA website. It can be found under the media tab, so that applicants can review it for their reference.
thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, have a wonderful night, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.